Have you ever watched someone realize their entire worldview was built on a brochure?
Because that's exactly what it's like when Americans step out of the US and discover the rest of the world isn't some wild, uncivilized theme park. It actually works, often better.
From free healthcare to functioning trains, from safe streets to 6-week vacations, the reactions are pure comedy gold. Stick around, because you're about to hear the most hilarious, real, and painfully relatable stories of Americans discovering the truth about their own country, one awkward conversation at a time. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with your most patriotic friend, and let's dive into a world where culture shock meets common sense. I was sitting in a tiny cafe in Lisbon when I overheard an American couple at the next table arguing over whether Europe had their own Walmart. The husband, confidently sipping his espresso, said, "Of course they do. It's just called Walmart International." The waitress smiled and said, "No, we have local supermarkets." The wife gasped like she'd just been told gravity wasn't real. Wait, so you mean people here buy food not from Walmart? The silence that followed was the sound of two lifelong assumptions crumbling. I sipped my coffee and thought, the first stage of American awakening, denial. At a hostel in Bangkok, I met this American guy named Tyler who was shocked, truly shocked, that the US wasn't the only country with freedom. He actually said, "Wait, you mean they can say whatever they want here too?" The British backpacker next to him nearly choked on his beer. I tried not to laugh as the Thai receptionist politely said, "Yes, sir, we are also free." Tyler looked devastated, like someone had just told him his dog ran away with the Constitution. One night in Mexico City, an American tourist at my hostel went on a 10-minute rant about how amazing it was that locals could drink the tap water without paying for it. We all stared at him, confused, until someone explained, "Dude, water's public here." He blinked like he'd just seen a unicorn. "So you don't get billed every month?" the guy beside me whispered. "He's learning." And that's when I realized nothing is more American than discovering basic human rights exist elsewhere. In Amsterdam, I was chatting with a group of tourists when an American woman asked, "So where do you guys keep your homeless people?" The silence was louder than a church bell. A Dutch girl calmly replied, "We house them." The American blinked, totally serious, and said, "Like, in real houses?" The rest of us looked at each other like, should someone tell her about social programs, or just let her enjoy the mystery? Once, at a bar in Prague, I overheard an American telling a Czech local, "You're lucky your gas prices aren't crazy like ours." The Czech man smiled and said, "We pay twice as much as you do." The American froze mid-sip, like someone just unplugged his brain. "Then how do you guys afford to drive?" he asked. The Czech shrugged and said, "We use public transport." The American blinked again. "You mean like buses? And you trust them?" The bartender whispered to me, "It's like watching a child see fire for the first time." I was waiting in line at a train station in Madrid when an American guy loudly asked, "So where do I tip the conductor?" Everyone around turned their heads. The station attendant blinked like she didn't understand the question. "Tip the conductor?" she repeated. The guy nodded, all sincerity. "Yeah, like for good service." The woman just smiled politely and said, "Sir, he's paid well already." The man froze like she'd just said the earth was flat. I could see it in his face, the confusion of realizing tipping isn't a global survival code. At a sushi bar in Tokyo, I met this chatty American woman who said, "You know what I love about Japan? Everything runs on time." If this was back home, the train would have broken down and the manager would blame the weather. The Japanese man beside her smiled politely. In Japan, being late is considered rude. She nodded slowly, processing the fact that punctuality wasn't a mythical concept, but an actual social expectation. Then she muttered, "So, people just care here?" At a hostel in Berlin, this American dude was bragging about how he pays only $400 a month for health insurance back home. A German girl spat out her drink, laughing. "You pay how much?" she said. The whole table went quiet. The guy looked around nervously. "Wait, don't you guys pay that too?" she grinned. "No, it's covered." He looked like someone had unplugged his soul. I swear I saw his American pride deflate in real time. I was in Paris once when an American tourist got visibly upset that her waiter didn't smile constantly. "He's so rude," she whispered to me. I told her, "He's not rude. He's just French," she gasped. "But shouldn't he act like he likes his job?" I laughed and said, "He doesn't need to pretend. He gets paid well enough to not rely on tips." Her jaw dropped like I'd just revealed the plot twist of a soap opera. One time in Dublin, I overheard an American tourist say, "You guys get vacations every year? Like actual paid ones?" The Irish bartender nodded slowly. "Aye, about 6 weeks for some folks." The tourist looked like someone had told him Santa was real. "And your boss just lets you leave?" The bartender laughed. "We don't ask permission to be human." That line hit him like philosophy. He sipped his beer in silence after that. I was sitting on a train in Copenhagen when an American guy pulled out a wad of cash and said, "Man, I love how safe Europe is." Back home, I wouldn't flash money like this unless I wanted to get robbed. The Danish woman beside him smiled gently and said, "Well, maybe people here just don't rob you." He laughed nervously, then realized she wasn't joking. His smile faded as he quietly shoved the bills back into his wallet. At a beach bar in Greece, an American girl told me she couldn't believe kids were walking around without supervision. She pointed at a group of 10-year-olds buying ice cream alone. The local bartender said, "They're fine, it's safe here." The girl frowned, "But where are their parents?" The bartender smiled. "Maybe they trust their community." You could practically see her American paranoia short-circuiting. She whispered, "That's actually kind of beautiful." In Stockholm, I met a couple from Texas who were shocked that Swedes pay 50% in taxes. The wife gasped, "How do you survive?" Their local guide said, "Easily. It gives us healthcare, education, childcare, and roads." The husband nodded slowly, like a man trying to solve a math problem without numbers. "So you're telling me it works?" The guide smiled. "Yes, it works." They stared at him as if he had just claimed to see a unicorn in his garage. I was having dinner in Madrid when an American couple at the next table asked the waiter, "What kind of government do you have here?" The waiter smiled. "A democracy." The man laughed. "No, I mean, like, who's your president? Or do you have a king?" The waiter looked confused. "We have both, sir." The wife whispered, "Wow, so like double government?" I nearly choked on my drink. They looked genuinely amazed, as if democracy was a rare collectible. One night in Melbourne, I heard an American tourist rant about how dangerous Australia is because of spiders and snakes. The Aussie guy next to him chuckled and said, "Mate, our animals are fine." "You've got daily shootings." The American paused, blinked twice, then said, "Yeah, but we don't have kangaroos breaking into houses." The Aussie grinned. "No, just people." The silence that followed was priceless. I was in Rome once, standing in line for gelato, when an American guy in front of me sighed and said, "Man, I wish we had old buildings like this back home." The Italian woman behind him smiled sweetly and said, "You do, but you keep rebuilding parking lots over them." He looked genuinely offended, like she'd insulted his family. Then she added, "We just kept ours." You could practically see his patriotism melting faster than the ice cream. One morning in Seoul, I overheard an American tourist ranting to a local cafe owner. You guys have so many security cameras. Don't you care about privacy? The owner smiled and said, "We do. That's why our police don't need guns." The American froze, confused.
Wait, what does that have to do with it?
The owner shrugged. We trust each other more than we fear each other. The man went quiet, staring into his coffee like it just revealed the meaning of life. At a hostel in Buenos Aires, an American girl was telling everyone how cool it was that the locals protested peacefully in the streets. If we tried that back home, we'd get tear-gassed. A local woman looked at her gently and said, "Then why don't you change that?" The room went silent. The American stared at her, processing that simple sentence like it was an encrypted message. I was at a bar in Edinburgh when an American student confidently said, "The US has the best education system in the world." The Scottish bartender smirked, "That's why you paying a fortune for it." The guy frowned. "Well, yeah, but it's top quality." The bartender raised an eyebrow. "Then why ye studying here?" The silence that followed was so sharp you could cut it with a haggis. Once in Zurich, an American man at the train station asked a Swiss commuter, "Don't you guys get scared walking home at night?" The commuter blinked. "Scared? Of what?" The American hesitated. "You know, people?" The Swiss man smiled. "We have people. They just don't shoot. I swear I nearly spit out my coffee." The American just nodded slowly, like a man realizing his "Home of the Brave" slogan might have been false advertising.